Hi friends, welcome to day 10 of our Easter stitch along. Today we are going to be working on the first portion of our text. We're going to be doing by his wounds. We're going to be using color 436, 3 strands. So let's get stitching. All right, hopefully as you just saw, it is actually 2 strands, not 3 strands. I did proceed with this whole video using 3 strands, and I will show you at the end the difference of what 3 strands and the 2 strands you're supposed to use, what the difference looks like. All right, so I have 436, 3 strands on my needle, and we're going to be doing a back split stitch on our text. So text can be a little intimidating to some people, but it doesn't need to be. If you are just slow and methodical and taking your time, it should not be too overwhelming. I think the precision of it is what causes people to get a little stressed. But again, if you just slow down, I think it's going to be perfectly fine. Now, I don't use straight text as often, so this might be new for some of y'all who have stitched with me a lot. You're used to probably cursive a little bit more, but we have some straight text today. But unlike what I normally do with straight text, which is just a back stitch, I am doing a back split stitch. We'll move to a back stitch down here just because of how tiny it is, but for by his wounds we are healed, it will all be back split stitch. Now, we've already done this stitch on the outline of our banner, so we know how to do it. Now we just need to know a few tips on how to use that in text. So, when possible, I like to try and start a letter at the bottom and make sure I'm always pulling my floss up in one direction, rather than pulling my floss up from here and then pulling it down this direction when I'm coming back. So, when possible, try to start from the bottom. Now, there are times when it might not be possible to start at the bottom. Think about this O or this U, but when you can, just start at the bottom. So let me show you the first few lines and then we'll speed it up and then we'll be done for today. So starting here on the bottom of the B, I'm going to do this first line, this first vertical line. And now our stitches have to be maybe a little bit shorter than they were on the banner, the outline, because we don't have as much surface to work with. So you might need to make those stitches just a little bit shorter to make sure it all fits in there. Okay, so I have my about 1.5 inch length for that very first stitch. And then you go half a stitch forward and bring it halfway right in the middle of that first stitch. Now this is 3 strands, so you're not going to be able to split it perfectly in the middle, but that's okay. I tried doing this with 4 strands. I don't use 3 strands too often on the main section of text, but the 4 strands just really looked way too thick in my mind, at least compared to everything else that was surrounding it. Now, similar to what we did with the banner, when you get to a corner, you're kind of stopping your stitch and starting it again, not necessarily tying it off, but you want to be able to start afresh and not necessarily split the previous stitch. So for example, when we get to this curve here on the B, if it's going to let me get there, saying not today, we're just going to get all knotted. When little knots like this happen, you know, my camera's not focusing, I like to just use my needle to kind of help pull it out. Sometimes it's not a real knot, it's more of a fake knot. All right, so for example, at the top of this B, as we get ready to curve, I'm coming up here onto the B, and I'm not going to necessarily split that previous stitch because that would make it look curved. We don't want it to look curved, but I am going to go down in that same hole that we just finished. I hope that makes sense. Sometimes my words escape me. And I think that's why I do the videos. One of the reasons why I do the videos and I don't do as written instruction. All right, so now this next stitch in the B is going to split. Now my stitches are getting a little bit smaller because in order to get that nice curve, you need smaller stitches. And never be afraid in text to make a stitch and then take it out when you think, huh, that just doesn't look right. That doesn't look good. Sometimes you need to go a few stitches forward to see if really your stitch is correct. But if you make a stitch and you're like, yeah, that's not right, don't be afraid to just go ahead and take it out. Now right here, I'm trying to get as close as I possibly can to that vertical line without necessarily hitting it. And I'm kind of, you can't see, I can't really turn it around to show you, but underneath, as I'm pushing the needle through, I'm trying to tilt it a little bit towards the direction I'm going, just to help me avoid that vertical stitch, vertical line I've already done. Okay, so now we're going to come down here. And we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm not going to split there, but I am going to do similar to when I'm starting a new section. I am going to try and go into the same hole as over here. The stitch might be a little too far away to split. We'll see though. Don't be afraid to just make the stitch. Sometimes you just don't know what it's going to look like until it's actually in there. So I'm a little hesitant where this is going right now. But with my experience, you can always tell when I'm getting to the end of these videos when I just get very comfortable in what I'm saying. In my experience, I think this next stitch I'm going to make is going to help round this bee out so that it doesn't look too, I say stiff, but that's not, I don't think that's quite the right word. Too structured? No, that's not the word either. Okay, so let's split this one and see how that bee looks. If we need to take a stitch out, we can. Okay, so I think that that's fine, and because I think even then, even that stitch still looks a little straight to me. What I say, I'm thinking, okay, if I make one more, I think it's going to look fine. It's going to curve just like I want it to. You got to take that risk a little bit. This is a little bit of a tricky spot because I can't start all the way over here because that is too far of a stitch. But if I make it too small, then you're going to be making another split, back split, that's going to look a little funny. Let's see. You'd think I'm recording this video as if I've never stitched this piece before. Okay, I'm happy with all that. Let me put, I think I'm happy with all that. Yeah, let me put that last stitch in and see if it looks too short. Okay, So because that last stitch is a little close to where that knot is, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna split already in the middle of that previous stitch and bring it down instead. Whew, that one was throwing me for a doozy. Okay, well, let's move on to the Y and hope it doesn't cause as many problems. Now from the Y, you can't technically start at the bottom per se, but I am going to start at the bottom line. I'm just not necessarily pulling my stitches up. Okay, friends, this is where I am going to end the video for today. Go ahead on your own time, stitch the word wound, and then we will come back on day 11 and stitch we are healed. Now, a quick thing to note that I will have already made a note of it in the beginning of this video, but I just want to mention it again here on the end. I did accidentally say 3 strands, and I used 3 strands, but technically you were supposed to use 2 strands. 3 strands obviously works. I do think it's a little thick, and that's what finally gave it away to me as I was stitching. I was looking at it and I thought, huh, this looks a little thicker than normal. It was a little thinner when I stitched it the first time. So just FYI, I will have corrected myself in the beginning of this video, but if yours looks a little different than mine does, that's why. Let me show you just real quick the comparison between the final one that I did. That's the one that you see in all the photographs, all the graphics, everything. Let me show you comparison. All right, so this is the 2 strand by his wounds we are healed. This is the 3 strands. Again, this is what was in all the photographs, the graphics, everything you've seen. So if you do 2 strands, this is what it's going to look like. If you decide for some reason you want to do 3 strands, this is what it is going to start looking like. I am going to finish my piece using 3 strands just because that's what I started with, and it's not going to hurt anything. But I just want to throw out a disclaimer, clarification out there that I did not refer to my stitch guide like I was supposed to. So thanks, friends. See you on day 11.